As the second brightest star in the constellation Orion and making the hunter's right shoulder, Betelgeuse has been an object of fascination ever since its discovery. The red supergiant star is destined to go supernova, but as of late has been displaying some rather odd behavior that has scientists and astronomers buzzing. They have now predicted that Betelgeuse is headed for a massive explosion in 2022, the likes of which have never been seen before. And what's even better is that we might just get to see it right here from planet Earth. Welcome to Factnominal, and today we will be talking about the most exciting space event of our time, the colossal explosion of the giant star Betelgeuse. The Big Red Giant. If you look up into the night sky, you might be able to spot three stars that make up Orion's belt. The famous star pattern is extremely easy to identify, and if you look slightly towards the left of the belt, you will be sure to find a bright reddish colored star. If you did, then congratulations, you just spotted Betelgeuse. Remember Tim Burton's wild supernatural comedy of the same name? Well, back in the day, many considered Betelgeuse the star to be the doorway to infinite blackness of outer space, just as Betelgeuse the character was the doorman of the underworld, and the movie name was a simple yet clever play on words. But when it comes to the Red Giant, there is nothing simple about it at all. It is oftentimes referred to as Alpha Orionis, and is one of the most magnificent celestial bodies in the universe. Betelgeuse shines in the sky with a somber red hue, making it easily discernible to even the casual observer. You've probably even gazed upon the star before without even realizing what a cosmic wonder you were staring at. Betelgeuse sits approximately 724 light-years away from the Earth. When comparing the supergiant to our own star, it is roughly 950 times as large as the Sun. The star is surrounded by layers and layers of material that it's been shedding for all these years. To understand just how much mass it shed, one of the largest shells of material around it actually has a radius of nearly 7.5 light-years. Not only is this star so bright and beautiful, but it seems to be working overtime too, shedding all of that excess mass. What's so interesting about Betelgeuse is that it is an irregular variable star, or a semi-regular variable star, which essentially means that it constantly fluctuates in brightness. At times, it is one of the brightest objects in the night sky, and sometimes it appears extremely faint yet still present. The red color of the star gives us the clue that it is an old supergiant with cooler and older stars giving off that gloomy red hue. A star of this size and being so advanced in age will ultimately die out, and it seemed like eventually the big bright star would soon be headed towards a similar fate. But recently, when astronomers and researchers noticed that the great Betelgeuse was suddenly appearing much dimmer in the night sky, it began to raise many eyebrows, and has since led many to speculate that the giant star is on the verge of exploding, or perhaps something more. The fate of our stars. Generally speaking, all of the beautiful stars you see in the sky will someday eventually die. After all those years of burning up and shedding mass, there really is no other way around it. But how the star will die actually heavily depends upon what kind of a star it is. If you consider stars similar to the Sun, for example, the core of the star will eventually run out of its hydrogen fuel and begin to contract due to gravity. As this happens, the core begins to really heat up, which further heats up the outer layers, causing them to expand. The radius of the star increases massively and turns the star into a red giant. After some time of being in this stage, the helium will fuse into carbon in the heated core. When the helium fuel finally runs out, the core will now expand and cool while shedding upper layers and ejecting material around it to form a planetary nebula. Finally, the core cools and you are left with what is called a white dwarf. Scientists believe this process can take billions of years. But what about the stars that are much larger than the Sun, say for example like Betelgeuse? Well, these massive stars would also use up their helium fuel, and their mass is enough to fuse carbon into far heavier elements like oxygen, magnesium, sulfur, and iron, until a point where the core turns to iron and can no longer burn. The star will then rapidly shed its outer layers and collapse as gravity wins out, with the core shrinking to a neutron core. The core will heat up and finally explode into a supernova. The cataclysmic explosion releases huge amounts of energy and radiation known as gamma-ray bursts. The remnant of the core can either form a bright neutron star, or it may turn into the most mysterious object in space, a black hole. 2022 supernova. Being one of the most famous stars in space does have its perks, and that means astronomers and scientists give Betelgeuse all the attention it rightfully deserves, closely studying and observing the star at all times. A rather interesting observation was made about the star in late 2019. As usual, Betelgeuse appeared a little dimmer in the sky than normal, which wasn't very alarming in itself, except that it suddenly abruptly darkened and no one knew why. The giant star shifts brightness regularly, and its surface is like a mosaic of cells that swell and shrink, almost like the whole thing is pulsing. But this time, the star dimmed and never brightened up again as per its normal schedule. It just kept getting darker and darker and faded to nearly 40% of its usual glimmer. Many immediately began speculating that the giant star might actually be ready to explode. The dramatic dip in the star's brightness was heavily pointing towards the fact that it's on its very last stages of life and could be exploding soon. And by soon, we mean as soon as the year 2022. Many began speculating that within a few years, we could actually witness this explosion, the likes of which have never been seen before. The last ever supernova observed in our galaxy was Keller's star way back in 1604. Researchers and amateur astronomers were pointing every telescope they could at the SIM portion to figure out just what exactly was happening, and if 2022 could really be the year we witness a supernova explosion. Slowly but surely, over the following few months, the star returned to its original brightness. As further studies were conducted in thermal infrared wavelengths, the star didn't appear to be dramatically cooling as it should have if it were headed towards an explosion. This caused a divide within the scientific community over what was really happening with the star. Some suggested that it was hiding behind a huge cloud of dust, causing it to appear dimmer than normal, while others thought that its rapidly shedding layers were obstructing our view of it, which would mean an explosion would be imminent. Stellar spectacle. When a massive star like Betelgeuse eventually does explode, it's bound to have some very large-scale effects. Explosions like this are rare, and astronomers estimate that one occurs in our galaxy just a few times every century, and they don't happen anywhere close enough for us to observe. The colossal explosion will completely disintegrate the outer layers of the star's matter and scatter everything into the darkness and beyond, releasing extremely strong radiation and heaps of energy. As for planet Earth, luckily we are too far away for this explosion to cause any kind of harm or danger to human life. Some astrophysicists have suggested that we would have to be at least within 50 light-years of a supernova to be feeling the full effects. Well, it looks like we dodged that one. Our planet's magnetic field would deflect any particles coming our way, and the distance is legs enough that high-energy radiation reaching us would have zero to little effect. The night sky will be brighter than it ever was, putting on the most spectacular display. It will become the brightest object in the sky, even rivaling the moon as the brightest in our sky. But what would happen is that everyone on Earth at the time would be treated to perhaps the most spectacular and beautiful light show ever. It would be like the first time you saw the Disney Light Parade as a kid, only much better. Until we develop an ultra-powerful neutrino telescope or some advanced technology, we won't really be able to pinpoint when exactly it will go supernova. And more interestingly, when studying stars, we are technically looking into the past. And since the star is over a few hundred light years away, it's kind of interesting to imagine that it may have already gone supernova and we just don't know about it yet. But there is absolutely no doubt that when Betelgeuse goes supernova, it will be a glorious sight to behold. So what do you think? Will Betelgeuse turn into a neutron star or a black hole? Tell us in the comments. Please like and share the video, and don't forget to subscribe to Factnominal for more videos like this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.